Hi there, friends, and welcome back to the Ohio and Pennsylvania, and welcome to this May 2026 update. I know it's been quite a while since I put out an update for the Ohio and Pennsylvania. Life's just been busy, and it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do down here in the basement. But now with that decided, I've been slowly working on making progress, as well you can see here with these new modules. So to explain a bit more about that and about some of the other changes that I've done in the last couple months, I'm going to send you on a little bit of a tour. So hope you guys enjoy kind of a look and seeing what has changed here in the last couple months. To start off the changes, you might see I'm pointing here at the wall. You might be wondering why I'm doing that. Well, if you remember in the last update, when I showed you this new space, you might have remembered the walls were it's faded white, is what I would say. There are a lot of holes on this wall, especially here, and that wall over there. Both the dry walls that were with the house and looked like they had been neglected for quite a while. So that was our first job before we did any more work down here, was coming in and painting that after getting the ceiling painted. So we did that ourselves, my parents and I, over a couple weeks, and it turned out really good. Ended up using this light gray color from Sherwin-Williams, and that turned out to work really nicely. So I just went with light gray because I feel like it added a little bit color versus white. And it provides one of the accent colors to the Ohio and Pennsylvania scheme too, which is an added bonus. So overall, very happy with how that turned out, and it certainly has made the basement a lot nicer. So yeah. So with that, I'll move on to something not in the layout room, which is the track plan. So I will send you to me to discuss that new track plan for the space. And hello, friends. Welcome to the track plan for the new version of the Ohio and Pennsylvania. So this is the final design I have settled on after months of deliberation and planning with people and going back and planning more. So the end result is a mostly double-decked layout that will change slightly from the locale where I was originally planning to do. Originally, I was just planning to model Chardon Yard and Chardon downtown, then north of there to towards Painesville. However, after doing some research, it turns out that Middlefield, which is south on the line, actually has a lot of industry. Like, a lot. Which is surprising given it's in the middle of one of Ohio's Amish countries. So that sold me on designing this new layout. So with that, we'll go ahead and start with an overview of the lower level, and then we'll move up to the upper level. So here in the lower level, we start in the back of the basement. I'm using both that and the main portion of the basement to model the layout. The stairs are over here off to the right. You'll come down this way and then back into the room this way. So starting here in the back of the basement, down here at the bottom we have staging. So this will represent everywhere north of Chardon. So mainly being the CSX interchange in Painesville, so that's where CSX run-through trains will come from, as well as one train to a small part of trackage we have north of Painesville into Fairport Harbor. So all those trains will then come through Chardon. So Chardon has the same industries as it did on the previous layout. It's just compressed into a bit smaller space here in the back of the basement. That way I can have multiple local jobs without having to spend a bunch of my space in the main layout room to find room for Chardon. So then there's a short passing siding here if needed, but pretty much should be just long enough for the local. The trains will then go through a hole in the wall here before
ending up in a completely redesigned sharding yard. So after doing some review on the plan, I was originally going to keep sharding yard as it was, but ultimately it made more sense for me to double end it. It just gives a lot more operational flexibility and is more realistic. So since I had the space, I figured I might as well do it. So this was the result there. So there'll be 5 main tracks as well as engine terminal. There'll be some tracks for fuel deliveries. I think it's only going to be a little shorter than this ultimately. And then on the other side, there will be transload for best sand. So as was the previous sharding yard design, there'll be that. And then there'll be another track here, probably for other transload traffic, or I'm thinking more likely will be a repair in place track that cars will be taken off and delivered to throughout the session. But that is subject to change. There's also a yard lead at this end for the switcher, and I forgot to mention, but there is another staging yard here. This represents staging for traffic west of the modeled portion, so that would be Cleveland and west from there. So these are much longer tracks than I have in the back of the basement, so hopefully they should be able to hold multiple trains, but we'll see how things go with the design. So after finishing here in sharding yard, the trains then head south up the helix. There will be one exception that won't go up the helix, and that will be a turn job from the Ashton, Beulah, Carson, and Jefferson. Although that might be renamed in my timeline because it is much bigger than it is in real life. But that will come into sharding yard and then go back here to the staging track here. All other trains will continue south up the helix to the upper level. So here we have the upper level. So you can see the helix here. The last half turn will continue up here and drop trains off on the upper level. A bit of space here, and then we reach East Clarendon. So East Clarendon is likely only going to have, it might have 1 or 2 industries, I haven't decided yet. At least one of those is going to be an aggregate business, so hauling like gravel or something, stuff to that effect, because that exists right along the right of way in real life. So that's going to be one of the industries here. Whether it'll be second, I haven't decided yet. But if it's the only one, it will get multiple tracks, unlike the current plan. Then from East Clarendon south, the trains will continue through some rural terrain here, with the exception of one switch here at Burton. That isn't actually serving an industry, that's serving as a potential for a continuous loop. So if I have layout tours or just want to run trains around the test, I have the option to add a continuous loop. However, during an operating session, that will not be used, and it will only be used as a yard lead for CraftMade, which I will get to in a minute. So then we enter middle field, where there is a lot of industries to switch. That's going to have its own local that also works East Clarendon. So here in downtown Middlefield, we'll have Mercury Plastics, CraftMade's original plants, which I'm calling Plant 2. And then there'll be a grain elevator here and a lumber yard here. So it should be an interesting switching job for people, and really will make people think about how to switch that out. There's passing siding here long enough to handle pretty much any train I should throw at the layout. And then there'll be crossovers here as we head over to the biggest industry within Middlefield, which is CraftMade. CraftMade makes a variety of cabinetry products, and they have a massive factory in Middlefield. It just screams to be rail served, because it was built after the line was abandoned in real life. But this would be probably one of the largest customers on the Ohio and Pennsylvania system. So I'm thinking it may justify its own switching crew. That's my hope. We'll see if there's enough traffic to justify that. So there'll be a small yard here, various unloading tracks for products needed to make the cabinets, and then some loading track for cabinets, And I don't know, I might have other hardware as well. We'll figure that out later. There's also a small siding here if need be. And then there's that track I mentioned earlier. That's the continuous run / yard lead for that craft-made switcher. But otherwise, that's pretty much the end of the traffic on, or visible traffic on the sub, or the on the layout here. And then it'll go back here, back into the back of the basement, where it will have staging on top of the existing staging. That will represent Warren, which is the main hub of the Ohio and Pennsylvania, as well as where the CSX run-through trains will transition back to CSX trackage. So overall, this is the plan I have for the layout. It does definitely have some drawbacks, and it's a little bit more complex than some of the other plans I considered, but I think the operational ability of the layout will make the complexity warranted. So yeah, that's an overview of the track plan. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Now back to the rest of the video.
So now having seen the track plan, we'll return to the modules you saw at the beginning of the video. So these are the first 2 converted modules of the 5 I have. So these were actually the last 2 built in, I think, July and August last year. Those were built for a lower height of 44 inches to provide a couple inches of separation from the track. However, that served nicely for the new base layout height in this new plan. So you can see the lower level there is at 44 inches, and then you have the upper deck. Track height will be about 12 inches above that. So not a super huge difference, but it is certainly some. You can see there that the upper deck is supported by these angle brackets. While not most ideal for keeping separation between, or not sticking out too far, they were a lot cheaper than getting the ones that were flush. And knowing I needed to buy a good number of them, I figured I'll work the backdrop around them later. So for now, that's where they're at. Staying constant with the other modules for the lower level, they're also going to have foam. Again, get some more variety in ground terrain once I get to shaping it. It'll also help to hide the fact that I forgot the modules were 26 inches and not 24. Oops. So it'll kind of drop off in front here to represent terrain around that area, because it just kind of drops off right off the part where I model. So these 2 modules are going to end up being the south end, or south/east end of Chardon Yard here on the lower level, as well as probably some of the other stuff. The upper level is going to be where East Clarendon is. So yeah, so those 2 are pretty much done, and they've tested out pretty good so far. And now I'm going to move on to converting the other ones. And if you're curious how I converted the modules to have the upper deck, and why I didn't just do that to the wall, first of all, the walls here where the double deck are all brick. And knowing I'm not going to be here forever, actually probably not longer than 10 years at the most, I didn't want to drill holes into the walls, so I had to self-support them. So I just ran a 1x3 up, joining it to the existing modules at a couple different points. So you can see, for instance, one of those here. So there, it's screwed in to the other module to give it more support. And that's what's holding up the upper level. So far, it doesn't seem to be an issue with those angle brackets and that, and keeping the shelf 12 inches wide. That seems to work just fine. So anyways, that's an overview of the new modules, and then I'll quickly take you to the old modules. Moving on to the old modules, as you can see, they are a little bit messy here. Just because I'm storing a bunch of stuff on there for right now. But if you notice, all the track is piled up right there on that module. So yes, I did wrap up all the track. As I mentioned in the track plan review, I just determined that a double-ended yard would be better than a single-ended yard. So up went all the track and roadbed and everything off these modules. So next step, a lot of the wiring and everything is also gone for now. So next steps here is going to be lowering them to 44 inches and then converting them like I did with the other modules. The one exception is going to be the one module I had that was shorter, which is this module. I have already removed its original lower level, which you can see down there. But this module is going to be extended to be 53 inches, so slightly longer than the existing modules. And you may ask why I'm doing that. Well, that's because I had about a 13-inch gap in between the wall and where the layout would start. So I figured that would be the easiest way to fill it, would just be extending the short module with a brief, they bolted on frame, or screwed in frame to extend it, and that would do the trick. So that's where I'm thinking right now, but we'll see how things go with that. So anyways, that's all for the existing modules. Now I'm going to talk about some of the new equipment I got in the last couple months. So over the last couple months, I've gained a lot of new rolling stock, so I'm only going to go through a sampling of some of the new rolling stock I've acquired. Some of it's similar to what I'll lay out here. So here's the first round I have. So on the very left over here, you can see I bought some Athearn 3-unit car spline car set. I figured it might want to do some TOFC traffic as part of my intermodal train, run in partnership with CN. So that's what I'm planning to use that for whenever I actually buy some trailers to put on it. So as along with that, I also bought, it's not in order, but there's also one of these here from the local hobby shop. I got these Greenbrier Transverse Coils cars. When I'd seen Rapido announce them, I didn't pre-order them, but I thought they were interesting. And once they announced them, I did start seeing them everywhere, and I was like, well, I should probably pick one up. They're basically the face of modern steel service now. So yeah, and they're nice models. I do really like them, just more expensive than I'd like them to be. So you can see it in the box there. Very more boxy model, but it's still interesting. I'm going to zoom in here to this one next to here. On the left, we have this Burlington Northern boxcar, but it is not Burlington Northern lettered. It is lettered for the SNAB or the Southern Nebraska Railway, which is my friend Jack's freelance. When he came in January to visit me here, he brought this along for me to have, and I gave him one of my Ohio and Pennsylvania 2-bay covered hoppers. So we had a nice swap from that. Eventually, this is probably going to get pretty weathered and faded around that patch area to give it a bit more age, but haven't gotten there yet. But thanks, Jack, for bringing that, as well as for bringing the car next to it, this CSX 3-bay covered hopper. He bought me a 3-kit set from AccuRail when he was visiting one of his local hobby stores a while ago. So he brought those with him as well, and I assembled them pretty quickly. So I've got a couple new 3-bay covered hoppers then. So that's some fun stuff there. And finally, over here to the right, we have some Walthers pre-orders that arrived earlier in the year. So we have up top one of my 3 or 4 2-bay covered hoppers that arrived with this order. That particular one, I believe, is the Arkansas-Oklahoma Railroad reporting marks. And then the bottom one is a 30,000 gallon tank car for a shell. So, yeah, Walthers makes good models, and they weren't that expensive, so picked up some of those. So that's the first brand. I'll now shuffle out and show you some of the other rolling stock I got. Okay, welcome back to Rolling Stock Overview. So here I've got a lineup of some of the more recent stuff I've received. So starting off to the left, I've got some undecorated cars I picked up at a local train show back in beginning of March. Some of my friends from the local NMRA division were selling some of their old stuff, and I found some useful stuff that I bought for pretty reasonable prices. So you can see I bought another 60-foot box car. So that'll go along with my ones from Walters that I'm already painting. And then the top one is a coal hopper. That one isn't for the Ohio and Pennsylvania. Instead, it's going to go along with a order I'm getting from home shops here in the next month probably, of their coal hoppers for the Cardinal system. So I'm hoping to use those 4 hoppers to kind of augment that train. And hopefully we'll run it over the Ohio and Pennsylvania somehow. But we'll see. That's still in the tentative stages of planning. But you heard it here first. There you go. In the middle there, we had a middle of the road order. So my scale trains operator auto racks came on order. So due to budget issues, I did have to drop down to 3, but it did allow me to reselect which ones I got. I wasn't originally going to get the Faramex car, but it grew on me, so I decided to get that. And top one is for CPKC. Probably my, other than BNSF, favorite prototype railroad right now. So, yeah, no, those were really well priced. I think they're still on sale if you're interested in getting them for $46. That's not bad at all for an auto rack. So, and they seem to look really good. I haven't gotten to run them much because my layout's not operating, but I did get to operate them at a friend's recently. And then finally on the right are 2 very recent arrivals from home shops. So the bottom car was one of the Virginia and Ohio auto racks they had on sale. And the top car is one of their home shops leasing PD 5000 covered hoppers. I had seen this at the freelance forum, and it was one of the few things that the only thing that I didn't order from the freelance forum announcements that I was still interested in. And seeing that they were slowly getting sold, I figured it was time to pull the trigger on one. And I must say, I do really like the logo on those. I think it really is cool. So, yeah, I'm sure I can find some place to use it on the Ohio and Pennsylvania, or at least run it through. So, yeah. Anyways, that's the rolling stock haul. I also got a couple locomotives in the last month. In the last couple months. I got a chassis system the chassis system heritage unit, ES44AC. So that's been run and tested. I also bought a new undecorated -840C. So that'll be used for Ohio and Pennsylvania unit. Same for an undecorated ES44AC I bought from one of my friends at the hobby show, where I bought the other undecorated stuff. That's getting ready for prepped to be painted. And then I also bought another undecorated unit that's for future acquisition. So, yeah, I've acquired a couple of locomotives, also sold a couple locomotives. I've sold my other -840B, mainly because I determined that 4 axles are not going to be useful in 1% grade territory for locals. And I'm planning to sell my C39-8, which I think has appeared in a video or 2 on this channel. I just don't think the Ohio and Pennsylvania would want to keep it around. it wasn't very comfortable according to crews, and at that point you might as well just use the regular Dash 8s, which were much better. So anyways, that's an overview of equipment I've gotten over the last month. Now I'm going to send you back to earlier me to wrap up the video. And welcome back, friends, and there you have it. That's all the things I've had going on in the last couple months. I know it is quite a lot. Quite a lot of new things have arrived for the railroad, quite a lot of new things being built, and things being done to the room. It's also seemed to be kind of slow, but again, there's a lot of other stuff going on outside of model trains right now, so things aren't moving as fast as I would hope, but it happens. So with that said, there are some things coming up that you can look forward to. So I know I showed you these 2 modules and the other 3 that are still being renovated. Those 3 are going to be the next ones to be converted. So here, hopefully later this month, I'm going to start work on those, and hopefully by early June, that's at least my internal deadline, I'll have all 3 of these modules ready to go, all of them bolted together and ready to start relaying track. And hopefully this summer I should have some time to get track down and running. But we'll see how things go on that front. Other than that, hoping to do some painting with my new booth throughout the summer in preparation for the freelance forum later this year. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to be going back for that, and I'm excited. Speaking of which, I'm wearing my shirt from last year's, and hopefully at some point this summer I'll finally get that video or 2 that I have from last year's forum out so you guys can see that. Again, I have not been really into editing videos lately, as well as the rest of the stuff going on, so that's why you haven't seen too much from me lately. So anyways, that's where we're at with the Ohio, Pennsylvania. I know this has been long overdue, but hopefully that helped give an idea of what all has been going on, and looking forward to bringing you more progress as 2026 continues along. So until next update, I will talk to you guys later. Bye.